Okay, so we're going to continue on with 16.2, the second half, talking about radians. Now, the book, I don't think has a great explanation. We already talked about radians, converting degrees to radians, and this is just going to be basically a review of what we did in class. When we're talking about radians, we're talking about a radius of 1. When we have our circumference, the circumference equals 2 pi times r, but r is 1, so circumference equals 2 pi. And since the circumference equals 2 pi, we have our original equation, which was the measure of the degrees over 360, multiplied by 2 pi r, but r is 1, so they have 2 pi, which means that we could simplify this equation. The equation they want you to use is the measure over 360 times 2 pi, but we can simplify this by saying the measure times 2 pi over 360, or the measure times pi over 180, which is what I taught you in class. So we're going to take our degrees and we're going to multiply it by pi over 180 in order to turn them into radians. So in the case of 180 degrees, like this one over here, we take 180, you multiply it by pi over 180, and you end up just getting pi radians. If we wanted to do that with 60, we would say 60 times pi over 180. That's 6 over 18, which is both divisible by 6. So that's pi over 3 radians. Why don't you go ahead and do these next two. So I'll pause. You pause the video right now. Okay, so we have 90 times pi over 180. That's 9 over 18, which is pi over 2. 45 times pi over 180. 45 is going to be a fourth of 180, so that's pi over 4. Next, we are going to go the opposite way. We are going to take radians and turn them into degrees. Instead of going degrees to radians, we're going to go the opposite direction. Well, we multiplied it by pi over 180. The way to undo this is to multiply by 180 over pi. So we're going to take our 3 pi over 2, find out how many degrees this is going to be, cross out our pi's. Our 180 divided by 2 is 90, and then 3 times 90 is 270 degrees. So let's go ahead and do pi over 4. So pi over 4 times 180 over pi. That's just 180 divided by 4, which is going to be 45 degrees. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause the video and do these two. All right, so we have 5 pi over 6 times 180 over pi. We'll cross out our pi's. 180 divided by 6 is 30. 30 times 5 is 150 degrees. 7 pi over 4 times 180 over pi. 180 divided by 4 is 45, and 7 times 45 is 315 degrees. So as a reminder, if we want to go from degrees to radians, we multiply our degrees by pi over 180. If we want to go from radians to degrees, we take our radians and we multiply it by 180 over pi. To summarize what we did in this section, if we know that 360 degrees is a measure of the full circle, what's the radian that corresponds to a full circle? So 360 degrees equals the full circle, which is 2 pi r. Therefore, our radius is 1, so it's just going to be 2 pi. And the two pieces of information we need to calculate arc length is our measure in degrees, and we need our radius. We need our arc measure. All right, and that is it for our 16.2. go ahead and do this last one, and then I will see you guys on Friday if you have any questions.